Story 1. 11:40 p.m. in a corporate hotel suite, a closed briefcase sat on the desk right after the client walked out. It was late when the door clicked shut behind the politician. A clean exit, no drama. I turned toward the desk and the briefcase waited for me, closed, centered, something I was certain hadn't been there a minute earlier. I stepped closer, letting the lamp's warm light trace the leather. It carried a faint fresh scent, expensive and recently worn. My fingertips brushed the cover, a soft graze that felt too deliberate. In the window's reflection, the briefcase looked a little more open than it did in front of me. I told myself he must have forgotten it, though he never brought anything inside. I reached to straighten my shirt but ended up adjusting the jacket he'd left on the chair instead. The fabric was still warm, like someone had just slipped out of it. When I looked back, the briefcase sat at a new angle, subtle but unmistakable. "Don't overthink it," I whispered. My own voice felt too close, like the room breathed the words with me. Warm air slid past my ear, slow and uninvited. I spun around to an empty door and a locked latch. Behind me, the briefcase clicked softly. I checked my phone to ground myself. No messages. No alerts. Just my tired reflection blinking back. A thump pressed through the hallway wall, not a step, more like someone leaning their weight right outside. I sat at the dining table for distance. When I pulled the chair in, my knee brushed something warm beneath it. There was nothing there. No bag. No shadow. But the warmth clung to my skin, and the briefcase now sat slightly open, like it had been waiting. I stood again, watching for any airflow that could have nudged the lid. Nothing moved. A strand of hair slipped forward. When I brushed it away, my skin prickled hard, like another hand had hovered there first. In the window's reflection, the lid looked wider than it was. I unlatched the lid just one notch. The room fell into a heavy silence, the kind that feels aware. My breathing sounded doubled, a second rhythm soft beneath mine. The air around the briefcase felt humid, almost like something inside had exhaled. I opened it fully. Photographs sat inside, crisp and glossy. The top one showed me stepping into the hallway less than 10 minutes earlier. Same clothes. Same posture. Whoever took it had been close enough to hear the elevator doors close behind me. I lifted the next photo. Something warm pressed lightly against the back of my hand, too focused to be a draft. The warmth lingered even after I pulled away. A fresh, clean scent clung to the interior of the case, new, familiar to no one I knew. The photos shifted as if settling. I bolted for the elevator. The hallway was empty and humming. When the doors slid open, the briefcase waited in the center, already open, holding a new photo, me asleep. Warm breath touched my ear, a soft murmur without words, coming from behind where no one stood. "If you were in my place, would you have opened it?" Hours later at home, I checked my phone for the photos I'd taken. Every file was gone, like they'd never existed. But my last selfie stopped me cold. I looked straight at the camera. My shadow behind me, though, was angled slightly to the right, watching something just out of frame. Story 2. 21:15, the flat was supposed to be empty, but the TV was already on, humming like it knew we were coming. The blue glow shook across the glass table when I stepped inside. I tried to blame the cleaning staff, but the volume was too low, too intentional. Slipped in behind me, quiet, poised, like she'd walked into her own reflection. We stood close while I reached for the remote. Our shoulders nearly touched. Her perfume drifted over my collar, warm and recent. The TV changed channels on its own, security footage of the hallway. Leaned just enough for her arm to press lightly against mine. "These don't come with the flat, right?" I tried switching it back, but the button stuck. Stepped in, adjusting my collar with slow, deliberate fingers, the fabric brushing my skin. A small spark of heat lingered there. In the screen behind us, our reflections lagged by half a breath, like someone else was choosing when we moved. "I don't like this," I whispered. came too close, her breath warm against my ear, her words finishing inside it. "We're not alone in here." She wasn't looking at me, she watched the hallway feed, where a shadow slid past without a footstep. I told myself it was old wiring, a forgotten system. Then I saw the remote's cracked panel, forced shut. Walked to the sink and stopped. "Did you use this?" A single glass waited there, wet, droplets fresh as if someone had placed it moments before we arrived. I leaned beside her and our knees brushed. Firm, not accidental. The air felt damp, as though someone had breathed in that corner. Her fingertips grazed my wrist. We stood in a silence too deliberate. Then the elevator dinged. 2 soft chimes. No one had called it. We stared down the hall. The elevator didn't open, it simply waited. Stepped closer. A loose strand of hair brushed her cheek and I lifted it away. Her skin prickled under my touch, rising in a slow shiver. "Don't turn around," she breathed. On the TV, something in the hallway feed already had. We backed into the living area. The flat felt narrower than before, like the walls were listening. Found my hand with a light hold that grounded us both. The TV flickered to another camera, this one inside the bedroom closet. The door in real life was cracked open. On screen it opened wider. I forced my voice to stay level. "We're leaving." Nodded, though her eyes stayed glued to the closet feed as it crept open another inch without sound. The elevator chimed again, same 2-note code, but closer, like from inside the vents. Touched her throat. "It's following us." We moved to the door. She slipped past me, leaving a warm trail on my neck that shouldn't have lasted. I reached for the lock when a faint perfume, not hers, clung to my sleeve. Behind us the remote clicked. The TV showed a camera facing our own door. The doorknob twitched. "What? Again?" Stepped into me, breath hot against my skin. "Don't open it," she murmured, her voice a low thread. Her fingers pressed my sleeve, steadying herself. On the TV the knob jerked harder. Metal scraped. Then a whisper brushed my ear, a beat after she spoke, from directly behind me. The lock trembled twice and stopped, as if whoever held it realized we were listening. I pulled L back, tore the chain free, and we ran, down the stairs, past the elevator, never looking behind us. The remote's final image stayed burned in my mind, the door pushing inward, darkness testing the gap. We never returned. By morning, the listing said the flat had been unavailable since 2018. No note. No update. Just gone. You would have stayed, or run. Story 3. 0:20 in an empty stadium, the VIP box light glowed even though the entire floor had no power. The hallway felt hollow as we climbed, each step too clean, too sharp, like the place had been waiting for us. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound fell flat against the concrete. When we reached the box, the key light blinked green before he even touched it. He stared at me, confused, then at the glowing strip above the door that shouldn't have been on. The air smelled like cold metal and leftover heat from a crowd long gone. He held the key card out anyway. It unlocked with a soft click he didn't recognize. Our shoulders brushed as he leaned in again, close enough for me to catch the clean hint of perfume he'd put on minutes before. The light drew a soft outline across his mouth when he glanced back at me. The door eased open like someone was pulling it from inside. The suite was quiet, chilled, almost staged. He kept turning the key card over in his hand, checking the faded sticker on the back, like he expected it to change. I reached up to straighten his collar, my fingertips skimming the warm fabric. The small rasp of the material felt louder than it should have. In the glass wall, a reflection passed behind us a second too late. He tried speaking about anything but the door, but his voice dropped lower with every line. When he leaned closer, his last word brushed my ear, warm and slow. A thin hiss of static crawled across the room, settling under the lights. For a moment I thought someone else was whispering back. He tapped the wall panel, but nothing responded. The field below was black except for our section, glowing like a target. He stepped beside me, pretending to check the view, but I could feel his focus tilt toward the silence instead. Somewhere above, a relay snapped twice, sharp as knuckles against metal. We sat on the narrow bench under the monitor. The space forced us close. His knee touched mine and stayed there, heat spreading through the contact. The room held its breath around us, the air tightening like it expected another sound. Then a soft click echoed in the hallway, the unmistakable chirp of a key card scan. He rose too fast, startled by a flicker from the monitor. A strand of hair slipped across his forehead, out of place. I reached up and brushed it away with the tip of my fingers. The skin under my touch shivered lightly, as if reacting before he could. In the window behind him, a shadow crossed without matching any movement he made. He whispered for me not to move. We stayed still, quiet, our breaths falling into the same slow rhythm. The silence thickened until it pressed between us. The rafters above seemed to listen, leaning closer in the dark. Then the stadium PA crackled awake, dry and broken. It spoke his name. Just once. Stretched thin like worn tape. He backed away from the speaker, shaking his head. The sound repeated, drifting from deeper inside the stadium. His hand brushed my wrist, checking if I was still there. Behind us, the suite door eased open on its own. He stepped toward the doorway, then stopped. A faint warmth lingered on my skin where his hand had been. The air carried a clean scent that didn't match his cologne. Something recent, like someone had been close to him moments before we entered. The lock outside the door flickered red to green to red in slow, indecisive pulses. He leaned near my ear to whisper a plan, his breath warm against my skin. Before I could answer, a light pressure touched my shoulder from behind, not his. I turned to nothing. The door slammed shut, the lock punching into place. Something slid across the floor outside. The second key card. Identical to his. The PA spoke his name again, overlapping voices. He grabbed the handle, but the mechanism wouldn't budge, as if someone braced it from the other side. The lights over our section flared bright. The rest of the stadium stayed dark. I picked up the second key. It was warm, as if held seconds earlier. He whispered that this version had been deactivated months ago. The PA clicked, ready to speak again, and the warmth in the key didn't fade. If you heard your own name in an empty stadium, would you face it or run? The next morning, when he tried returning the key, the system marked it as disposed. But the warmth stayed in my palm long after I let it go. Story 4. 2355, an armored sedan idling on an empty side street with no driver in sight. The engine murmured low, lights off, making the whole block feel staged. I stepped closer, checking the shuttered shops, the dead windows above. Nothing moved except the heat rising from the hood. It shouldn't have been there, not without the chauffeur, not on this street, and definitely not waiting for me. A clean trace of perfume hovered near the door frame, warm and recent. My fingers hovered by the handle, catching the faint shine of a street lamp bending across the metal like someone had just shifted away. The lock clicked open on its own, matching the pause in my breath a little too perfectly. His jacket lay folded on the back seat. When I reached to straighten it, my fingertips grazed the warm fabric, a soft drag like it had just been touched. The cabin went quiet in a rehearsed way. The GPS lit up unprompted, new routes glowing red, all ending in the same neighborhood he swore he'd never step into. A hiss from the speakers brushed my ear, warm and low, too close for any real speaker placement. I pretended to adjust his collar again, but a faint shape on the windshield didn't match my posture. My client's voice rose from the radio, only sliced, rearranged, stitched into something he'd never say. I slid into the back, keeping the door cracked just enough to escape. The routes refreshed again, looping back on themselves like the car had been circling that forbidden block all night. His messages were empty. But the cabin felt lived in. Vents tilted toward the back seat, seatbelt twisted, a quiet static waiting for someone's breath. My knee brushed his jacket, a quick slip of fabric that left a warm ring under my skin. Before I could move, the door sealed shut without my hand on it. A faint trace of fresh perfume drifted through the cabin, impossible in a sealed car. Then the radio played my voice, slowed, warped, speaking sentences I didn't remember giving to anyone. A loose thread from his scarf caught on my wrist. I brushed it aside gently, and the skin beneath tightened like it expected another touch. The cabin lights faded. For 1 second, the rear view showed someone sitting behind me, still, patient, before the glass cleared to nothing. Silence settled, thick and decisive. A soft warmth hovered near my neck, close enough to feel intention but not contact. Outside, the storefront reflection showed the car's windows turning darker than they were inside, as if something on the other side was waiting for my next breath. I tried to override the map, but the screen pulsed red, heartbeat slow, drawing everything toward that same point. The radio flicked on again, my client's voice cracking through edits sharper than before, anger woven into each clipped breath. Come back. He never spoke like that. Not to me. Not to anyone. I reached for the digital key, but heat clung to the leather, the ghost of a hand just lifted. The air thickened, carrying a faint, fresh scent that didn't belong to either of us. As I picked it up, pressure marks shimmered under the surface, fading like someone had pressed too hard. A shadow drifted in front of the headlights, slow enough to notice, too vague to trust. The engine slammed awake, pinning me to the seat. A warm breath brushed my ear, a whisper shaped by someone standing impossibly close. The sedan lunged forward and braked hard at a narrow alley. Headlights caught his shirt, folded neatly on the ground. A light trace moved along my neck, like a fingertip deciding whether to stay. Another whisper rose outside the rear glass, answering a question I hadn't asked. Would you step into a car that already knows your name? I stumbled out, leaving the key behind. By the time I reached the corner, the sedan was gone, vanished without engine noise or lights. I tried to blame politics, paranoia, anything rational. But 3 days later, it waited at my building's entrance. Same silence. Same darkness. The digital key lay on my floor mat, patient. I still don't know whether something inside wants me to open the door, or listen for the next route. Story 5. 1905, the corporate tower hallway was empty, yet the conference room showed as occupied. I reached the 32nd floor expecting silence, but the panel beside the frosted door glowed red. I told myself it was a glitch, just leftover data from an earlier meeting. Still, the air felt held, like the corridor was waiting for someone else to arrive. He stepped up beside me without a sound, close enough that our shoulders almost touched when he leaned toward the panel. His clean, freshly laid perfume folded into the stale office air. The display's light cut a thin line across his mouth, too still, as if the room were studying him. He didn't speak. He only reached out and smoothed the collar of my shirt with the tip of his fingers, a slow gesture that left a warm trace under the fabric. In the glass wall, our reflections stood side by side, except his didn't mirror the movement. Only mine shifted, alone. He leaned closer, breath warm against my ear. "Try your pass again," he murmured, the words finishing inside my hearing like they wanted to settle there. I held the badge to the reader. A sharp beep. Read again. Then a faint scrape inside, like a chair dragging an inch. I checked the hallway. Empty as a sleep study lab. He didn't look concerned, only expectant, as if the room owed him something. "I reserved it," he said. "It should open." The confidence in his voice felt older than him. We stepped forward at the same time, and his knee grazed mine, light, steady, not pulling away. The corridor air felt humid, wrong for after-hours cooling. I lifted the badge again. The sensor flashed blue for a breath, as if it counted 2 bodies instead of 1. A soft vibration trembled through the door. I leaned in to listen. A loose strand slipped across my face and he brushed it aside with 2 fingers, slow enough that my skin prickled before he touched it. The door seal showed a thin sliver of space, like it wasn't fully shut. We waited. The quiet thickened around us, shaped by the closeness we weren't acknowledging. His breathing threaded through the stale air, warm and steady. Our reflections appeared again, mine facing the door, his facing me. Neither of us had turned. I crouched to check the gap at the bottom. A bright strip of light spilled onto the carpet, steady and impossible. The system listed the room as dark. I tapped the glass once. No shadow moved. No shift inside. Just that wrong, unwavering glow. When I stood, he moved closer again, his arm brushing mine, leaving a warm trail on my skin. I reached for the badge and caught a trace of his cologne on the doorframe. He hadn't touched it. The scent sat in the air like someone had leaned there a moment ago. The reader blinked blue, then fell back to red. He stepped behind me, breath warming the side of my neck, his fingers grazing my shoulder as the lock released. The door opened on its own, revealing darkness where bright light had been. A single chair faced the wall, his badge hanging from the back. He whispered something I couldn't hold on to. The echo came from the corridor behind us. Would you have stepped into that room? I crossed the threshold. The door shut softly behind me, sealing out every sound. No footsteps. No breathing. Just the chair, the badge, and the faint trace of his cologne circling the dark. Security logs showed only one person on the floor. His phone went dead that night. But the next morning when I put on my jacket, his badge was in my pocket, warm like someone had just slipped it there.